I've been using openSUSE now for well over 550 days, and I've made several videos about it over the course of that time, and I still have a little bit of a ways to go before my 2-year challenge ends. But over the course of my time using openSUSE, there are many things that are just not right. Now, don't get me wrong, I love openSUSE. I have a sticker, and I'm going to show you the sticker because of course I am. There you go. Sorry about the microphone noises. It has to be done. It's in the bylaws. But anyways, I love openSUSE. I think it's a fantastic distro. It's way more stable than any rolling release distro has a right to be. It's fantastic. The ButterFS implementation on openSUSE is the best thing I've ever experienced on Linux. It's by far the best thing. It's just so good. And openSUSE itself is just one of those things where you use it, and if it works for you, it's really hard to leave. Trust me, I'm going to figure that out in July when I have those distro hopping urges and I can distro hop again. But I realize, am I really going to ever find something that works this well? And that's a question I'm going to have to answer in July. But we're not there yet, and I'm still using openSUSE. But just because I love it so much doesn't mean that there aren't some things that are just not right. So today, what I'm going to do is talk about 10 things that openSUSE could do better. Now, I thought I done this video, but apparently I've done bits and pieces of it where I've talked about some of the things on this list, but not others. So we're going to put it all together today in a big grand 10-point list. So let's go ahead and jump in. But before we do, if you leave a thumbs up for this video, I'd really appreciate it. Put that stuff on camera. And if you do that, it would really help the channel. So thank you so very much. I lost my way there somewhere in the middle of that sentence, but nobody mentioned it, and I'm sure it didn't happen. So anyways, let's go ahead and jump in. So the first thing, obviously, it has got to be the first thing, is Zypper. Zypper is a good package manager. It's not nearly as bad as everyone says it is, but the primary complaint over Zypper is that it's slow, and it is slow. It's not as slow as people think that it is, but it is slow. And one of the reasons why it is slow is that it doesn't have parallel downloads. And it hasn't had parallel downloads ever, and it may never have them. Now, I have talked to an openSUSE developer. I actually talking to 2 of them. One of them said that they're not doing it. Like it was in the process for a long time, and they just scrapped it. I talked to another one on Reddit, and he said that it's still in progress and that they're working on it. So where they are in between those 2 extremes, I don't know when it comes to parallel downloads, and I don't think that they know. To be honest with you, I don't think that the right hand knows what the left hand is doing when it comes to this subject at all. Let's just all assume that it never happens. And unfortunately, that's going to mean that Zypper is bad. Because you can't be a modern day package manager and not have that functionality, because it's just something that all the rest of them have. All of the rest of them have managed to do it. Zypper, which has been around for longer than the vast majority of package managers. Like, Zypper has been around for a long time, and the fact that it doesn't have this feature makes it bad. And that's just sad to say, because it's also a good package manager in every other regard. The syntax is very, very good. The management of repositories is very, very good. It does a whole bunch of stuff really, really well. But in this one area, because of the lack of parallel downloads, it takes away the vast majority of the good stuff you can say about it. So Zypper needs to get better. And I've talked about that ad nauseum over the course of the last year and a half. So that's the first one. So the next one up is YaST. Now, YaST doesn't have a functionality problem. I don't think that anyone can argue that YaST doesn't do enough. That's not an argument that can be happened. YaST does everything. Like, if you name a Linux function, or even an openSUSE function, a Linux function, YaST probably does it. Like, it manages your firewall, it manages software, it manages your file sharing, it manages everything, logs, you name it, YaST does it. And that's part of the problem. Part of the problem with YaST is that it does a ton. It is the KDE Plasma of tools. It does everything, and it's meant to do everything, but I think that they could do a better job of making that more user-friendly. Part of it would be just making it look like it was developed within the last 10 years. Okay, I'm not asking for miracles. Let's not try to say anything weird about modern here. But let's try to make it look like it wasn't developed in 1996, which is when it was actually designed. Now, I think that it has gone through some iterations since then, so I'm just mostly mocking. But it still does look and function like it was developed way back when. And that look and feel plays into how it works. It really does. And it also scares away people who aren't necessarily the most adept at using Linux. They're going to see that thing and immediately run screaming for their mummies. Because it's just a horrifying UI when it comes to anything. It's hard to find stuff. It looks old. It feels old. It's slow. Everything opens up in a new window, which bugs the crap out of me. It's just not well designed at all. So it needs a full revamp. Like YaST 3 needs to be here now. I truly do believe that a good revamp of the UI would make it more usable, and that's what it really needs. Is it needs to be more usable. Not that it needs more features. It needs to be more usable. It needs to have better discovery of the features that it already has. It needs to be better organized and just a better design overall. I really truly do believe that, because I think YaST is fantastic, but it's only really fantastic for those people who know how to use it. And unfortunately, figuring that out from a new user perspective is almost impossible. So that's number 2. Number 3, and this has to do with the installer, is that it should have a more intuitive partition management during the installation process. Now, this is not something that any distribution really does all that well, to be honest with you. Partition management in any installer, not great. Fedora doesn't do well. Ubuntu doesn't do really well. You name it. Nobody does partition management particularly well. Now, they do it okay, and openSUSE also does it okay. But if you are, again, I'm not going to say a new Linux user, because chances are brand new Linux users not using openSUSE, but if you are somewhat less extreme when it comes to Linux nerddom, chances are you're not going to know everything there is about partitioning, but you're going to know enough to be dangerous. And usually that means that you can be perfectly fine in Ubuntu or Fedora or whatever, where it's more easy to do. On openSUSE, the partitioning is less user intuitive, and that makes it harder for even those of medium skill to accomplish what they need to do. Now, is it impossible? No, it's usable, but it could be better. And I think that another place where they can improve upon there is the explanation of what's happening and what the choices are. So ButterFS, as far as I can remember, it's been a while since I've actually installed openSUSE at this point again, but I think ButterFS for the main partition is default. But I'm not sure, and I never know for sure, so I always go through the guided setup. And I do believe that ButterFS is actually set up, but I never remember that. But also, I don't know if you don't go through the guided setup what you actually get. I should probably try to do that one of these days. And yes, if you're just going to bypass the partitioning altogether, you're not going to have any of the problems that I have seen. And it's not really problems. Like I said, it's just lack of good design there. I think that if you do go through the guided setup, though, you discover that it's just a series of drop downs and a lot of white space where they could use to explain what the hell's going on there and what choices you should make. So I think that a more intuitive and better designed partition management scheme when it comes to the installation is a better thing that openSUSE could do. The next one is more esoteric, and that I'm asking for a friendlier community. Now, I have discovered a lot of good people in the openSUSE community. I've talked to a lot of them, and I think that many of them are great. Some of them, assholes. They are assholes. Now, that's in any community, so it's not necessarily specific to openSUSE, but I have to say that there's a higher percentage of douchebags in the openSUSE community than most others, but also they're very abrupt. Now, that doesn't mean that they're assholes, but if you are in the openSUSE forums or you're on the Discord and you ask a sillier question, a question that's on the sillier end, you're going to get more abrupt, less polite answers. Now, some of that is just because I'm going to get myself in trouble here. It's just some of them are German, and Germans are just kind of like that. They're more abrupt. They have less patience for that kind of thing, and that's a wide, vast generalization. I understand. But from my experience, that's just kind of the way that it is. But the overall sense, because of those things, because of the higher percentage of assholes, because of the Germanness of the forums and stuff, you get a overall sense that the community is not as friendly as some of the other ones. Now, it doesn't necessarily mean it's a bad community. There's a lot of fantastic people there, and I think that overall it's a good community, but if you're new to openSUSE and you have an experience like that, you can probably come away from it with a sour taste in your mouth simply because you probably met someone who is very abrupt with you, or sometimes just downright mean. So that has been my experience in some cases, and it's kind of unfortunate because overall the community has been pretty good. Number 5 on the list is a big one. Really, this could have been number 2 or number 1, and it has a lot to do with Zypper, actually. But this is the Packman repo needs to go away, or needs to be better, but I would prefer it just to go away. So if you're not an openSUSE user, you probably have no clue what I'm talking about, and you're probably thinking like, Matt, isn't Packman the package manager for Arch? That is true, but this is Packman, not Pacman. And Packman is a repository, and you almost certainly have to use it. It has all of your codecs in it, for one, and it has a whole bunch of other stuff that you're probably going to need over the course of your using openSUSE in order to function, right? So if you want to have any, like there's a lot of non-free stuff in there, right? That's what they use it for. The problem with it is that, well, there's actually multiple problems. One, it's astonishingly slow. So outside of the whole parallel downloads things, Packman is the number one reason why Zypper is slow. If you have Packman enabled with Zypper, chances are it's going to be 50 to 60% slower than it would if you had that disabled. So, pro tip, if you want Zypper to be faster, disable the Packman repository. Trust me when I say it will be faster. It's not going to be fast, but it will be faster. Unfortunately, that means you don't get any updates for any of your codecs or any of the stuff you've installed from Packman, so chances are you're just going to have to enable it again, but that's beside the point. So, not only is Packman like super slow, but it's also down a lot. Like unfortunately, the way that they've set it up is that there's only like 4 or 5 mirrors. A couple of them are in China, so you're never going to actually connect to those. One of them is like in Czechoslovakia or something like that, and the other ones are in like Germany. There's no American mirrors there whatsoever. So if you're in America and you're using this, it's even slower than else. So if you're in Europe, maybe you have a fantastic time with Packman, and it's just because I'm a good old Yank, I have a bad time. I don't know, but if you're away from any of those mirrors, it's slow, and they're down a lot. So yeah, it's just a bad experience, and I spend most of my time with Packman disabled, and that means that I have to remember to re-enable it to get those updates every once in a while. So stuff, a lot of times Mesa is in the Packman repository. Like a lot of times, not all, actually I shouldn't say a lot of times, sometimes you have to use the Packman repo for Mesa because it has a more recent version than what's in the main repository, so they kind of switch back and forth. Now, you can set Zypper up so that it doesn't do that, but still, that means that you do have to sometimes, if you want the most recent version of Mesa, use Packman. And that's not a great experience because Packman is crap. It's really, really slow. It needs to be better. More mirrors. Like seriously, more mirrors. Contact a university here in the States or in Canada or literally anywhere on this side of the Atlantic. I think it would be better. Like you managed to do it in China. We have some servers over here. I'm sure someone could host that stuff and make it easier. So that needs to be better. Number 6 on the list is more of, again, an esoteric one, and that is that they need to do a better job of marketing the Open Build service. The Open Build service is awesome. It's fantastic. It's the AUR of openSUSE. Is it as good as the AUR? No, but few things are. But it's really, really good. It has a ton of software on there, and it allows basically anyone to create packages and upload them to those repositories and then share them to basically any distro, but basically mainly openSUSE. And that opens up openSUSE to a wide range of software. Now, it has its flaws, similar to the AUR, where you have a ton of software on there that has been abandoned and never updated. So that happens. But it does have this huge selection of software when it comes to libraries and regular pieces of regular binaries and all sorts of stuff. Unfortunately, unless you're on openSUSE and you've used it for a little while, you probably don't know what it is. If someone says the OBS, you're thinking, well, the Open Broadcast Studio, the thing that I'm using to record my video right now. It's not a great name, but The Open Build service is amazing. I wish they would do more to put that out there and say, hey, use this. Fedora has the exact same problem. They have something very, very similar to the OBS called Copper. Unless you use Fedora, you probably have never heard of that before. So the Open Build service needs to be more marketed. It needs to be out there front and center. People need to say, hey, this is how you use it. The tool that you use to interface between openSUSE and the OBS isn't installed by default. What is wrong with that? Come on, man. OPI should be a default package on all versions of openSUSE out of the box. Now, I don't know about the immutable stuff. Maybe they probably don't use it. But the rest of them, the ones that are regular Linux distros, OPI should be installed. That way you can get right... I mean, you have to use OPI to get the codecs that make everything run. It should be installed by default. And the fact that it isn't is dumb. It's the stupidest thing ever. So OBS needs to be more in front of people's faces, I think. So that's number 6. Number 7 is there needs to be fewer ISOs. I have given Arco Linux crap for this. I've given Debian a lot of crap for this, but openSUSE is just as bad. They have so many projects. They have the immutable stuff that's going on. They have Leap and Slow Roll and Tumbleweed and a server ISO and tons of them that I don't even know. Like there's ARM ones and there's just a ton of ISOs out there. Now I understand the reasoning behind it because they want an ISO for every like situation and hardware and doing package management in different ways and immutability and all that stuff. So they have reasons for them, but by having so many out there and having them basically front and center on the website, it makes it really hard for a user to come along and say, hey, which one should I use? Now, it's not so bad. It's not like the Arco Linux website at least used to be, where you had no clue what you're doing. They do at least front and center Tumbleweed and Leap, which is good. But those other ones, you can still find them fairly easily, and the amount of stuff around those, trying to figure out what they are, which one you should use, can lead to some confusion. Now, I don't know if getting rid of the ISOs is the option or just kind of pushing them off to the side so that they really do a good job of making Leap and Tumbleweed the options. But also, just having those different versions means that people are going to have to tune into those like news feeds to figure out what they are when they're updating, what all this stuff that goes around them, and all that plethora of information can lead to confusion. So some simplifying there, I think, could make things better. So that's number 7. Number 8 on the list, less community drama. I don't think that this is a possibility for openSUSE. Every time you look somewhere, openSUSE's got something going on that's weird. Like the latest one was they pulled a donate button out of the bottles package, which is weird because no one downloads the bottles package on openSUSE anyways. They're supposed to use the Flatpak. That's always been the way the bottles developers have wanted. It was to use the Flatpak. But there was a bottles package for openSUSE, and openSUSE approved it. They let it go through, but they pulled the donate button out of it. Now, this is stupid because there are tons of programs out there that have donate buttons, and openSUSE lets those through willy-nilly. Thunderbird is one of them. Firefox, Vivaldi. They all have donate buttons in some places, and yet openSUSE lets those through. But this, for whatever reason, and I don't know all the details, but they pulled that one, and there was a whole kerfuffle and all that stuff, right? So there's always something like that going on, whether it's political, they're talking about woke stuff or anti-woke stuff, left and right and left, and political bullshit, and all sorts of stuff goes on. Maybe this day it's the SUSE, the granddaddy, the SUSE guys actually trying to interfere with the project and trying to make them change the name. Stuff like that's always going on, and vast majority of people probably don't pay attention to it anyways, but if you pay just a little bit of attention to it, what's going on, openSUSE? Clean up your shit. Like, seriously, nobody cares about any of that stuff. Clean up the drama. We don't need any of that stuff, so stop causing drama, at least. It makes you look unprofessional, at least in my opinion. So, less community drama would be better. The 9th one on the list really should be higher on the list, and this is just the dumbest thing ever, and that's better NVIDIA support. Now, when it comes to certain distros, they don't like NVIDIA at all. I was very PC when I said that. There are a lot of distros that don't like NVIDIA because NVIDIA notoriously has treated Linux like crap over the years. But a lot of people use NVIDIA cards. A lot of people use. Like, NVIDIA rules the market. The vast majority, I would say, use NVIDIA cards. And that means if you're going to run a Linux distro, you have to make it fairly easy to get to those drivers. And if you don't do that, you've failed. openSUSE makes it hard to install NVIDIA drivers. And if you do get NVIDIA drivers installed, they're going to be a couple versions old, which is the dumbest thing ever. If there's anything you want the most recent version of, at least, especially on a rolling release distro like Tumbleweed, you want the most recent version of a driver. And the fact that openSUSE says you can't have that is dumb. It's the stupidest thing ever. And now, is it impossible to install the most recent version of the NVIDIA drivers? No, it's not impossible. You can do it, but you really have to go out of your way in order to get it done. And the fact that that's the case is just the silliest thing ever. Because, like I said, the drivers, when it comes to drivers for your GPU, and you're using a rolling release distro, chances are you're using a rolling release distro because you want the most recent version of something. And the fact that they hold those back for 2 versions is infuriating. It's just the stupidest thing ever, and I hate it. It's one of the reasons why I won't use my NVIDIA card in my computer, because I have to always fight to keep that version up to date. Now, the reason behind that whole 2 versions behind thing, I don't know what the real story is. I can't tell you because I've heard multiple reasons, rationales behind it. Some of them say that the person who maintains that particular repository only updates it every little while, and that's the reason why it's always behind. Some people say it's because they subscribe to a different branch of the NVIDIA repository or the NVIDIA drivers and are always on like the LTS/stable version, and the most recent version's never listed as stable. What the actual reason is, I don't care. I really don't care. On Leap, by all means, use the older stuff. On any of the other ISOs, I don't care. On Tumbleweed, it has to be the most recent version, and if it's not, then you can't call yourself a rolling release distro. You can't be that far behind. 1 version, even then, I don't think that's okay, but 2 versions, not good. Nope. So there's number 9. The last one kind of ties into the other ones, especially number 5 at Packman. So the last one is better codec support. So I don't know if other distros do this, because it's been a while since I've used other distros for any long period of time, but openSUSE has some codecs. Obviously, actually, they have a lot of codecs available for you using the Packman repository, and you can install those using OPI and the Open Build Service and Packman and all that stuff, right? So there's a lot of codecs that are there, but not all of them. Now, maybe that's just asking too much, but if you are, for example, someone who uses FFmpeg and you want to install that, and because there are so many different ways you can install it, sometimes you don't get all the codecs that you need. And that's not a great experience when you find something that there's, you can't convert something or you can't play something, whatever is the case. You can't do what you need to do, so you have to go either find the codec or find the right version of FFmpeg or the right version of VLC or whatever. And, it just leads to some strife. So I really wish that they would do a better job. Just put as many codecs in that repository as possible. If you're going to make us do Packman and codecs and all that stuff manually anyways, put FFmpeg in there and, just have it download by default. I think FFmpeg is actually installed by default, but it doesn't have all the codecs. I'm not actually sure about that. But the point is that I've struggled over the course of the last few months trying to find all the codecs that I need for certain projects. And whether that's led to me not being able to use Handbrake, for example, out of the box. Doesn't work with a lot of codecs because they're not packaged. It's not packaged right. FFmpeg is another example. They have multiple different packages of FFmpeg. Some of them come with a codec, some of them don't come with a codec, and you have to know which one to install. Which actually leads me to the 11th one that's actually not on this list, is that the naming scheme of packages in openSUSE is different. I was gonna say bad, but it's not bad. It's just different. So, where a package will be named this on every other distro, openSUSE will add something to that name. So, for example, Handbrake has a GTK and a GUI version, and that's tacked on to the beginning of the file name when you go search for it with Zypper. I think it's the beginning. I'm pretty sure it's the beginning. And what that means is that when you go searching for Handbrake, it doesn't find it. Like, you can do Zypper SE Handbrake, and at least the first time I tried it, it didn't find it at all, even though it is there. You just have to know how to search for it because it has something else attached to the file name. And I can't tell you the number of times I've come across this where I think that openSUSE doesn't have something, and they actually do, but it's named something different in their repository, or they've named it slightly different, or whatever. A lot of times it's a Python package and they've put the version of Python first in the name and then the package name. That's annoying because a lot of times the searching of Zypper just doesn't find those things. So sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. It just can get infuriating when it doesn't. So that's the list. The 11 things openSUSE could do better. Now, it sounded like I did a lot of ranting in this video, and I did. openSUSE is not bad. It's not perfect. So there you go. Any thoughts on openSUSE or the things that they could do better? You can leave those in the comment section below. I'd love to hear from you. You can follow me on Mastodon. That link will be in the video description. You can also support me on Patreon at patreon.com/thelinuxcast. Links for Ko-fi and YouTube will be in the video description as well. You can head on over to those places and give me some support if you can. I'd really appreciate it. Thanks to everybody who does support me on Patreon and YouTube. You guys are all absolutely amazing. Without you, the channel just would not be anywhere near where it is right now. So thank you so very much for your support. I truly do appreciate it again, like I said. You can support me on Patreon at patreon.com/linuxcast. I know I already said that, but if you can support me, I'd really appreciate it. You can also head on over to the store, which is available at shop.thelinuxcast.org. There you'll find all sorts of awesome merchandise, like that Linux nerd hat over my shoulder. You guys can get that and be a Linux nerd. You're not a Linux nerd unless you have the hat. There you go. Shop.thelinuxcast.org. Thanks everybody for watching. I'll see you next time.